Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What on Earth, the podcast that answers the big life questions about earth science and everything that is adjacent to it, or everything that sparkles our mind. I am Tika, and today I'm talking to
Weronika.
Yes. So last episode you heard Veronica interview me about my life, but today I also want to interview Veronica about her life because she also has a very interesting story to tell. And I think we're just going to dive right in. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I was born ready.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics again. Same as last time. Who are you? What is your background? And where did you start this journey in earth science?
Okay. So I actually also did not want to be a geologist at the very beginning. I wanted to be a military pilot. So
I'm sorry. Why are we like this?
And I also actually applied to military high school with pilot profile, and I was rejected because at that year they didn't have enough place for women, so they actually did not even consider women to get them into the high school because they didn't have enough boarding for them. So that was not only a crude feminist awakening, but that was also the moment when I had to think what I like besides running around in the forest and being yelled at and doing weird things.
Well, the yelling part still happened.
The other thing which was quite obvious to me was that I don't want to have a desk job. And then I was like, okay, I don't want to have a desk job, kind of like, being outdoors. And I was always very active person. So, well, let's go and study geology. That was a very short, very much tie between geology and geography, but I also didn't want to be a teacher. So I was like, well, then, because, back then in my head, geography equals being a teacher. And I'm pretty sure that's also not true, but back then it was that in my head. So geology. And I did my bachelor in Poland in Krakow. And that's one of the biggest, geology program in the country, especially because, Poland is quite well known, from the coal mining and copper mining. But I also knew that I didn't want to be a miner. So I actually at the very beginning didn't know that I like science, but then it hit me. I have a very vivid memory of my third year because the courses I took were very basic. In Poland, the bachelor is very basic. You take math, you take physics, you take chemistry, you take geology 1 and mineralogy and something else. And so that's very, 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 very basic. And on the third year, you start to diverge into some more specific fields. And I took geochemistry because that was interesting. This is where I met my future supervisor, who I really, really like. And I think he shaped my whole career with one lecture when he told us about basalts, which are the rocks you see on Iceland or in Hawaii. And he told me that based on chemistry, he can tell me where they come from with very small proximity. And I was like, what? This magic. I want to do this. Yeah. So this is how I became geochemist, because this was my first step to become geochemist. And then I got very much involved into scientific, student association, which gave us opportunity to explore science a bit more, because in Poland, I didn't feel like there was a much need of exploring science. There was much more need of teaching us stuff. And I wanted to explore. So that was a very good opportunity to do that and actually understand how science works outside of just applying it everywhere. And then my supervisor told me that, yeah, you're going to Sweden. And I was like, what? And it's like, yeah, I'm sending you to Sweden for a year. This is what it's going to be. But initially, before I went there for a year, I went there for 3 months to do scientific internship with Erasmus. And this is where I met my master supervisor. And this is also where I met some of the people that I later on stayed with during my master's. And that would be the origin story of the university. And then eventually I just felt like this is it. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I love the time we spent in Sweden. I did 1 year there, so not like you 2 years. And then I came back also to Poland and I did my master there. So it's like double programs. And then eventually I was like, now I finally know who I am. I'm a scientist at heart. I want to do a PhD because like the love I had for science, like I could not imagine myself not doing a PhD. That was like everything I ever wanted was study and become a scientist, because I found it the most amazing thing ever. Because first of all, the people I knew were always going to wild places. Like my bachelor supervisors group were going to Svalbard, and my master supervisor was going to like volcano sites and Fuego and like all these beautiful locations, which are not necessarily accessible to mortals, tourists, you know? Oh yeah, because
I'm a visual thinker. I now see like this geology god with a helmet and a hammer, just like walking around, being a god of who knows what.
Thunder and rocks and
I'm
minerals.
sorry.
No, I mean, you're not very far off, because like in my head, people who were professors, they were like gods, you know, like I was literally like kissing the earth they stomped on. And I was like, whatever they telling me, that was a gospel. And I was like, you know, like this is what I was in case of like mindset. I was like, this is the coolest thing I can ever accomplish in my head. That was becoming a scientist and becoming a professor.
I mean, it is really cool. I can see that.
It is a really cool career. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot to do with reality, my imagination back then. Because,
yeah,
you know,
your experience turned out to be very different from what you imagined.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So I did my PhD at ETH Zurich. It took me 5 years, which of this 5 years, for 1 year, I was already working. So in my last year, I was working already as a analytical manager.
Yeah, let's recap for the listeners. A PhD, how does that usually look like? Why do you do a PhD? What?
Yeah. So PhD is this very weird stage in your career, because you're not yet an independent researcher. So you don't have your own grant money, or like you can have your own grant money, but like generally it comes from a professor who already has certain amount of money for certain type of research, and he wants to hire someone who will work within that specific project. At least, okay, disclaimer, this is how my journey looked like. And I know that there are different PhD programs in different countries. It might look totally different, but this is how the science at my university looked like. So professor was opening a position which was filled with students, and the budget was coming usually either from their own research or from grant money or from scholarships. And why I'm saying it's a bit weird stage in your career, because like you are not an independent researcher, but you're also not necessarily a student. I know that it's very popular to say you're a PhD student, but I really don't like this word. I think it's more like a PhD researcher would be the correct way to describe it, because I fought a lot of fights where people were telling me that I'm still studying, and I was like, oh, I'm actually doing research. I took maybe 2 courses during my university time, and the rest was just my independent research. And my research was extremely cool. Like I did my PhD in the field of experimental petrology, which is making your own rocks from scratch. It's a cookbook. You have a cookbook, we have ingredients, and you create your tiny, tiny rocks with machines which are operating on very high pressure and very high temperature and very high electricity currents. So it was like material science and a bit of like mechanics and all of these things, which I found extremely interesting. And the cherry on top was that I was able to work with lunar samples, because my research was taking place on the moon. And the big questions I was trying to answer was how the moon looked like in the last stages of its evolution. Because at the very beginning of the moon, it was molten, and then slowly it cooled down with time, and different phases were coming in and out of the equation. And I was actually looking into those very, very, very last stages of crystallization in the rock, which was called rock. It's in a component which was called creep. So there was a lot of me singing, I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo, and all of those very weird, very, very funny titles. I think my favorite conference title was When the Moon Gives You the Creep.
Nice.
Yeah, and PhD was very fun. Like it was the most fun part of my life, but also the most difficult part of my life, I can say that.
Do tell more.
to not focus and linger too much on the negatives, but to mention them. You are 100% dependent of your supervisor. So he's your Lord and Savior, and whatever he says, it's a gospel. And of course, people can have different experiences, and I'm very happy if they had supervisors which were very allowing them to stray away in different directions. But in my experience, I was given all the tools and all the resources to do the research, but in the end, inevitably, that was my supervisor's opinion which mattered the most. And I'm not saying it was a good or bad, because like, of course, if I was making mistakes, that's definitely supervisor's way to step in. I think generally PhD is also the moment where we are entitled to stray away, have opinions, learn in our own pace, and discover what we like and what we don't like in science. And as much as I loved my science, because the project was extremely interesting and I felt extremely privileged that I can study the best university in the world for geology. In earth science, our department was the best in the world, with those gods of geology on the samples which were literally brought back from the moon. But at the same time, I feel like I'm suffocating because I just don't fit in to the narrative they really try to drill into me. And I remember that when there was a moment in my PhD path when I really was considering just to quit, because I didn't feel like I belonged to the research group, because the research group was the dynamic was very difficult there. I didn't have the best time towards the end of my PhD with my supervisor. But the thing which I really, really didn't like is to quit, because this was my dream. And I lost the chain of my thought right now.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a hard thing in science. Like, the scientists are very good at being a researcher, but they are not good at being human. So sometimes as a PhD student, you might feel like part of a team, but also sometimes you feel like you're the outsider or like a slave doing the jobs they want you to do, even though that's usually not the idea of doing a PhD, which I can imagine is very disheartening to continue.
It was a very disillusional experience, because you spend so much time on developing something which is very, very important for you, that you have to realize that it's not the most important thing for other people, your supervisors including, right? And like you said something very important. Like, scientists are very good in science, but they are not necessarily very good at human interaction. So if you're not a good manager, and we should treat PhD as a project. If you're not good at managing people, these people will inevitably lose, because what PhD did to me is like I lost my spark and I lost my love for science. And eventually I had to have a very hard talk with me and decide to not continue with my research. Like I finished my PhD, but I did not continue in academia.
Yeah, it must have been such a hard decision.
Yeah. Part of it comes from the fact that when I asked to do my postdoc at the same university as my PhD, I was told that this is not how science works and we should not do that, because it's bad for us and for our careers to do postdocs in the same institute as we did our PhD. And my counter argument was that I did my PhD within the time when there was a pandemic, when there was COVID. So like we were able for 4 years do science without changing the location. So like science that can still continue from the same place when everyone sits on their asses. We have right now social media, we have Zoom, we have Teams, we have all those platforms which can connect. We have conferences. Conferences are such a fun thing in science. We should definitely talk about it maybe later.
Yes.
Where thousands of scientists are gathering and exchanging thoughts. You can have internships. You can send someone to do research for a couple of months in different institutes which you're cooperating with, and send them back with the findings. There are ways of doing science without uprooting your life and putting you in a different environment for a very short period of time and repeating this process, hoping that you're gonna eventually settle down somewhere. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't decide to continue with a postdoc. The other reason was I was just very sour about the relationship with my supervisor and with my research group. I was afraid that it's gonna just happen again in a different research institutes. And the last part was just that I just felt that eventually I will do postdoc and I will be overqualified for industry. I had this very big fear of not being able to settle down and have a job. And I was afraid because inevitably professorship, being a professor is such a huge gamble as a career. You don't know if you're going to succeed, right? I would say it's even bigger gamble than most of the careers because eventually you may reach a ceiling, but you can still have your career path at least just stagnating. With research, you will just bounce back between postdoc and postdoc. And eventually it's just weird that you're, 40 years old without having a permanent contract.
The paths in science are super foggy and weird and wrinkly and non-linear. It's hard to really pursue it.
It's also a lot of coincidences, right? Good timings, meeting good people. It's not something you have control over. And me being control freak, that's why I'm a manager, because I love managing and I love controlling. This was something that was scaring me a lot. And even though I still love science and I had a deep appreciation of my path as a scientist, the costs of continuing was just too high compared to the gains at that time.
I also remember this last year, because you said you were working at the same time as finishing your PhD. That must have been tough as well. I'm guessing you were also ready to just chill for a while.
Yes. I would say last year I didn't have a single weekend for myself before I finished my PhD. And that definitely takes a toll on you in case of mental health, and generally your life, your social lives goes a bit sidetracked because you have this one singular goal. Why? But it also in the end, in hindsight 2020, I think it was worth it because it definitely showed me that I can survive a lot of things. I don't feel the pressure so much of I don't take everything so seriously, I think, because I'm whatever. I've been through worse, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, we got older and wiser. Yeah, that must have been. So if we talk about PhD and finishing up, you already talked a bit about it, but is that also what you would say was one of your biggest life lessons from the PhD time? Carry on, you can take it, it give you trust in yourself and your capabilities in some way?
So it definitely showed me that I can survive more than I thought I can, but also it definitely showed me that I was surprised about that lesson, that I need my people. I was very happy about the time we had in Sweden, but it didn't take me second thought to just move across the continent, right? We were all hanging out, having a good time in Sweden, and eventually I was just bye, I'm doing my PhD, right? So me, say, that was 6 years ago, had no problem moving around. And then my PhD came, COVID came, my grandpa passed away, and I could not connect with the people that were my social circle and
your peers.
My peers. I also had struggled to create my group of friends in Zurich. So I discovered that I only function well if the social life is functioning well. And I finally built my social life in Zurich. I also have a beautiful social life with you guys from Sweden and my friends from Poland. And now I just try to keep it like this because I discovered that this is big part of me. I'm a very social person. I'm not an introvert. I'm an extrovert who likes to yap around and never shuts up. And I just need my audience to listen to my crazy ideas.
So we did the whole academia journey. You said you left academia. What did you do? Where did you go?
Yeah, in my last year of my PhD, when I was already writing my thesis, or I was in the trenches, I got approached by colleague of mine who was also a colleague of my back then supervisor, one of my supervisors. I had three supervisors, the Holy Trinity. And he said that he's looking for someone to start as a lab specialist and take over responsibility of analytical instruments. And I was like, hell yeah. I want to, first of all, my goal was stay in Switzerland and be able to work there full time, which is not necessarily easy in Switzerland because you need to have a work permit. Second of all, I was very unsure where to go because I knew that I don't want to do postdoc anywhere else. And I was fully disillusioned that I'm not gonna do a postdoc at ETH. And then I joined Gubelin Gem Lab. So it's a gemological laboratory, one of the very best in the world. I'm gonna flex a little. It was very interesting choice because when I was a kid, and I'm still am, but like when I was a kid, my aunt was always telling me that I'm like one of those birds which likes to, the shiny things. I know the word in German, the Elster.
Magpie, it's in English.
Magpie, it's in English. So I was always having an eye for nice jewelry, everything sparkle and whatever. So for me, chance to work with gemstones was like, oh my God. I did not even know that's a possibility, but that's such a cool niche. I want to explore that. And of course, it also helped that during my master's I did in Poland, I actually took a course about gemstones. So I had some understanding of the industry. So this is something, again, do the side quests, guy, do weird courses. And since then, it's going to be right now 3 years that I'm working for Gubelin. I became manager of analytics for all the labs. Because we also have locations like in New York and Bangkok and Hong Kong and New York. And there are a lot of instruments I have to take care of, which is very much fun because it links to my time during my PhD when I was taking care of instruments in the lab as well.
So it's actually a perfect combination of both traveling and having this steady home base in one country, in one place to build your life and your circle, right?
Yes. So I still get to keep all my friends in my basket, but I can also explore different countries by just visiting different labs. That's very much cool career.
That sounds awesome. Would you ever go back to academia?
I was thinking about it. And so I think you can compare it to having a toxic ex.
That is not what I thought you were going to say, but yeah, okay.
It's like you remember the good things, right? You remember the science, the chase of discovery, of, going to the details or focusing on atomic scale. Like this is what tickles my brain. Just generally atoms and like, my God, what happens with this mineral and what happens with this element if this mineral appears? Like this is where my brain goes, wow. And I still want to do this, but my brain somehow is like, tries to focus on the bad stuff and be like, hey, you left for a reason. Like this structure was not a good structure for you. You did not feel happy there. So yeah, so it's like a toxic ex. You kind of miss it, but there's a reason why you don't want to go back.
Yeah, makes sense. It's sad though, because you are so smart and such a good scientist. Like they will miss you there, but it has to be the right environment for everyone to shine. And if that's not there, yeah, please don't. But please do, but please don't.
I think that don't want to close the door because maybe, the toxic ex was just one of the exes. And I know that maybe in different research groups would be different, but inevitably postdoc is also just a very short-term contract, right? It's, for example, 4 years. And then by the end of it, I will be 35. And then try to pursue science more would take time. And it's, again, the big leap of faith and the big leap, you just need to be at the right time, knew the right people, have the right funding. So we, again, run into the same situation, even though I would love to do a postdoc just to change my perspective on academic environment, just to prove myself right that, science can be fun if the environment is fun, because I saw it in Sweden, I saw it in Poland, right? Science can be fun if you have a right group and you're supervised in a correct way. It's just that at this point, life becomes a bit more risky if you consider that. And I kind of enjoying the 9 to 5 and the weekends because I finally have hobbies. I didn't have hobbies during my PhD because my PhD was a hobby. And since I finished
your life work.
Yeah, it was my life work. And since I finished, I picked up so many hobbies. I cycle, I cross country, I climb, I do mountaineering and all those cool stuff, which part of me always wanted to do, but just never had time to it, right?
Yeah. Life's just different. And that's super fine as well.
Yeah.
Let's cross this last bridge and see how you got into podcasting, because that seems like a leap from gemology in a gem lab and being like a super cool scientist doing repairing all these like instruments and stuff. Tell us.
Yeah. So it's just the residue of my passion for science. It's like I don't want to get rid of it. I still want to read about it. I still like to talk about it. I like to still be associated with scientific community. Maybe I don't think about myself as a scientist anymore. I think of myself more as a manager, but I still find, science is my hobby at this point. So why not to do it with cool people that I really like?
It's an honor. Thank you for joining.
Always.
Yeah. So I think it's a good way to rekindle the spark for science. Well, is there anything you want to share with the listeners that we forgot to mention so far, or any life lessons you want to share?
Okay, so if you consider doing a PhD, there are 3 things you need to check. And this is very important level of checks. First, check your supervisor. The science can be the most amazing science you ever heard of, but if your supervisor is a dickhead, you're not gonna enjoy it. Then check the research group. Talk with the people your supervisor works with. Check the network. Check if he likes to go to conferences or he doesn't like to go to conferences. Check if the people are nice people or not nice people. You will be working with these people 7 days per week, sometimes 14 hours per day. You need to like them. And then third of all, check the science. If you love the science, go for it. So like there are 3 things you need to check, but please don't go just for the science, to the research group and to the supervision, which you feel it's not gonna be it. Because, also disclaimer, your supervisor might be good for other people and for other students if this is style they like, but if this is not your style of supervision, just find someone who can supervise you better, because the science is always cool. You will always find something, but just find someone you can do it with. It's more important finding a good husband.
I think those are the wise words we're going to end on today. Thank you, Weronika, for explaining your journey to us and telling the story of like your journey. I'm happy you are my co-host in this endeavor of podcasting. So thank you for being here.
Always.
I think we're going to leave it here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to follow us, go to Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or any other platform you find your podcasts. Leave comments, leave notes, send us your stories or your favorite reels or anything you want to share with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.